Hollywood troublemaker, and your favorite voice of reason in a town built on delusion.
Blake Lively's ongoing lawsuit has become one of the most talked about Hollywood legal battles of the year. The formal ritual of dominating online with its measured tones and precise language, and fan speculation to the point that some people are now expressing fatigue, where wit, saying they wish the whole thing would just disappear, can alter the very texture of the moment. It's evolving into something even more complex. The line between the pursuit of justice and the draw of entertainment, which was a strategic movement to refine and strengthen the uneasy question of whether the law itself could hold steady under the weight of fame's gravitational pull, such as filing a motion to dismiss to try to shut the lawsuit down before it gains traction. Wayfarer Justin Baldoni and the rest of his legal team made a different choice. They filed a formal answer to her claims, and notably, attorney Jed Wallace did submit a motion to dismiss. The key twist here lies in the affirmative defenses Justin's side has now added to their legal strategy. These are legal positions that essentially say, even if every single thing Blake claims is true, we're still not liable for anything. This is significant because it shifts the battleground from whether certain events happen to whether those events, even if accepted as fact, legally amount to anything actionable. One major defense involves questioning whether Blake can even sue for retaliation after her contract was fully completed. Her employment tied to the film ended in August 2024, after promotion wrapped, meaning any alleged smear campaigns or negative actions now might be outside the scope of what the law considers retaliation. The defense essentially asks, if she's no longer their employee, can there even be ongoing retaliation? Adding to this, Justin's team has introduced arguments about Blake's unclean hands, a legal doctrine suggesting that if someone has acted improperly or engaged in misconduct related to the subject of the lawsuit, they cannot seek relief from the court. In their framing, if Blake fabricated allegations, stole creative control of the movie, or otherwise acted in bad faith, she shouldn't be able to turn around and sue claiming she's the wronged party. This feeds into a broader credibility attack, painting Blake as manipulative and dishonest, which not only works in court but also in the court of public opinion. Justin's side also asserts failure to state a claim, another powerful defense that says, even if everything she's alleging is accepted as true, it still doesn't meet the basic legal requirements for a case. This opens the door for them to potentially seek summary judgment later, which could end the lawsuit before trial if the judge agrees there's no legal basis to proceed. They're also challenging her standing to sue, essentially questioning whether she's even the right person to bring these claims or if Justin is the correct target of them at all. This could be tied to contractual relationships. If Blake no longer had a contract with him or Wayfarer, or if she had previously waived her right to sue through an agreement or by not objecting at the appropriate time, then her claims could be void. Timing is another pillar of the defense. They suggest she waited too long after the film wrapped and promotion ended to file her lawsuit, which weakens her case both legally and in terms of perceived sincerity. This is supported by an estoppel argument, claiming that her past conduct directly contradicts her current claims, making it legally unfair for her to pursue them now. Essentially, if she behaved in ways that implied acceptance of the situation, or benefited from the very circumstances she's now complaining about, she can't legally flip her position. One of the most headline-grabbing defenses is the First Amendment argument. Blake has been going after online critics, commentators, and content creators, accusing them of being part of an orchestrated smear campaign. But Justin's team says that even if he made negative statements about her, those statements fall under protected free speech. If he called her a bully, suggested she tried to take over the film, or accused her of weaponizing feminism for personal gain, those are framed as opinions or statements within his rights to express. This is a direct challenge to her portrayal of herself as a victim of targeted harassment. It also feeds into the narrative that Blake's attempts to silence critics are backfiring, keeping the story alive and giving it more oxygen. This point even echoes recent remarks by Taylor Swift, who in a podcast with Travis Kelce discussed how obsessively engaging with criticism can magnify it. Essentially, the more you try to control the narrative, the bigger the fire becomes. Justin's defense leans into this idea, that Blake has made things worse for herself by continuing to fight in the public arena, and that any reputational harm is at least partially self-inflicted. There's also the claim that Blake failed to mitigate her own damages. In other words, if she truly suffered harm, she didn't take reasonable steps to minimize it. Justin's filing even includes a statement that, if he ever had any legal duties toward her, which he denies, he already fulfilled them completely when the film was finished, released, and promoted without major incident. This ties back to the idea that the professional relationship ended smoothly on paper, which undercuts her narrative of ongoing mistreatment. Collectively, these defenses do more than just lay out legal technicalities. They strategically position Blake as both legally overreaching and morally compromised, which could sway not only the judge but public perception. In court, the unclean hands doctrine is especially potent because it doesn't require disproving her factual allegations, just showing that she acted improperly in relation to the dispute. The estoppel and waiver arguments further erode her position by suggesting she implicitly accepted the conditions she now claims were intolerable. And the First Amendment angle could make it nearly impossible for her to win any defamation-related claims. In short, Justin's response is methodical, multifaceted, and aimed at dismantling her lawsuit from multiple angles. Legal insufficiency, lack of standing, procedural timing issues, contradictory behavior, moral credibility attacks, and constitutional protections. By doing so, his team is not only defending against her claims but also shaping a narrative that she's using the courts as a weapon after having already acted in ways that harmed the very project she was part of. If these defenses hold, they could either knock out large portions of her lawsuit early or create enough doubt to make it untenable for her to continue, especially if the court leans toward granting summary judgment. For now, the case remains active, but the legal chessboard has shifted. Instead of solely focusing on what happened during the production and promotion of the film, the spotlight is now on whether Blake Lively has the legal right, moral credibility, and procedural standing to be in court at all, and whether she may ultimately have built her own legal trap by overplaying her hand. Blake Lively's case has taken yet another turn in what is now a sprawling legal saga. The formal ritual of legal process with its measured tones dig deeper into both the procedural and jurisdictional flaws they believe exist in her lawsuits, while also laying the groundwork for what appears to be a calculated march toward a summary judgment rather than a full trial. And in that fragile balance, central to Justin's defense is the assertion that any agreement they had was fulfilled in full almost entirely. Blake herself has acknowledged that after she returned to the law itself could hold steady under the weight of fame's gravitational pull, further happened on set that would support her claims. In other words, from his perspective, the deal was honored, the work completed, and their obligations to each other ended. She is no longer his employee, yet she is bringing lawsuits over a relationship and a set of circumstances that are now long in the past. Justin also maintains that she has no viable cause of action to pursue punitive or exemplary damages because she failed to bring her claims in a timely fashion. Under federal law, sexual harassment claims must be filed within 300 days of the last alleged incident, but according to Blake's own complaint, those events took place back in 2023, and she waited approximately 18 months before filing. That delay alone, Justin argues, should bar her from recovering under federal law. In addition to these timing arguments, a new and particularly striking jurisdictional challenge has emerged in Justin's response. He now asserts that Blake's claims under California law are invalid because she does not allege any wrongful conduct by him that occurred in the state of California. This is more than a technicality. It goes to the heart of where she is legally allowed to bring her claims. If her allegations of sexual harassment are based on conduct that she says occurred while working on a film set in New Jersey, the logical jurisdiction for such a claim would be New Jersey, not California. Yet Blake has chosen California, a move Justin's side characterizes as forum shopping, likely because of the existence of certain legal provisions under California law, such as Section 47(1), which she might see as more favorable to her case. She points to her contract as saying any lawsuit must be brought in California, but Justin counters that this makes no sense if all the alleged harassment occurred in New Jersey. Jurisdiction typically follows the location of the events. His filings point out that in her own narrative, she only told Justin about the alleged harassment in January, while in New York, and never claimed that any of it actually happened in California. In fact, there's no dispute that any relevant on-set incidents happened entirely in New Jersey. This jurisdictional angle mirrors what Jed Wallace argued in a separate motion to dismiss, that she is suing in New York, using California law, over conduct that allegedly took place in New Jersey. From a legal standpoint, that's a triple mismatch. None of the forum choices line up with the actual facts. The result, Justin argues, should be dismissal. At the end of his answer, Justin formally asks the court to dismiss the case with prejudice, meaning she cannot refile it, enter judgment in his favor, award him his legal costs, and grant any further relief the court sees fit. He also requests that for any claims that do survive, he wants a jury trial, but only on matters that are actually triable and not barred by law. This distinction is critical. While Blake and her supporters have signaled they want a trial, Justin's answer suggests that he believes most of her claims will be eliminated before that stage through legal motions, leaving little or nothing for a jury to consider. The strategic pathway to that outcome appears to be a summary judgment motion. While a motion to dismiss is limited to the four corners of the complaint, meaning the judge must assume Blake's factual allegations are true and cannot consider outside evidence, a motion for summary judgment is an entirely different tool. It allows the introduction of evidence collected during discovery, including deposition transcripts, text messages, emails, contracts, and other documents. If Justin's side can show that there are no material facts in dispute and that the law favors dismissal, the judge can throw out those claims without a trial. This is where Justin's legal team can bring in the heavy ammunition. Blake's deposition testimony, any contradictory statement she's made, communications between her and Taylor Swift or Ryan Reynolds, messages with Isabella or other crew members, and the absence of formal HR complaints. Summary judgment motions can run hundreds of pages and include exhaustive exhibits to support every factual point. In that forum, Justin can highlight jurisdictional flaws, nothing happened in California, procedural defects, missed filing deadlines, and substantive defenses, no retaliation, unclean hands, waiver of rights. Part of Justin's broader narrative is that Blake has a history of using legal threats and demand letters to get what she wants, what he frames as a pattern of trumped-up claims meant to create leverage in disputes. While some might call this hard bargaining, it creates what Justin describes as an extremely contentious dynamic where negotiations occur under the constant shadow of potential lawsuits. That environment, he suggests, undermines good faith because the other party is not making decisions freely, but under duress, the knowledge that refusal could lead to immediate litigation. This paints a picture of an inherently defensive working relationship, one that Justin argues he was forced into from the start and that persisted through the production. He speculates that he may have felt unable to cut his losses and part ways with her during production because of external pressures, possibly from Sony, possibly from WME, her agency, and certainly from the legal risk of appearing to retaliate against her if she had already raised complaints. In his view, she exploited this defensive posture, making it impossible for him to take certain actions without exposing himself to more claims. If the court agrees with his defenses, many of her claims could be eliminated wholesale in summary judgment. Federal sexual harassment claims could be tossed for failure to file within the statutory window. California statutory claims could be dismissed for lack of connection to California. Retaliation claims could be rejected if defending oneself against false accusations is not legally retaliation, and other claims could be cut down through doctrines like waiver, estoppel, and unclean hands. Importantly, Blake's own deposition may hurt her case. By her own account, the retaliation she cites includes the lawsuit Justin filed against her and public statements made by his attorney, Brian Friedman, that she says harmed her reputation. But legally, retaliation is not defined by feelings. It is a specific type of adverse action recognized under the law, and courts require factual proof. Publishing a public record of a lawsuit is not considered retaliation. Litigation privilege protects such publications. In her previous attempt to claim defamation from the posting of legal documents online, the court dismissed the claim under litigation privilege, noting that the content was part of a public legal proceeding and thus immune from defamation suits. That dismissal was not based on Section 47. 1, nor did the court find bad faith. It was simply a matter of law. From Justin's perspective, this undercuts a core element of her retaliation narrative, that his public legal actions were meant to harm her. The law views them instead as legitimate procedural steps. If the judge agrees, much of her case could crumble. That's why his answer doesn't push for a full trial but positions him to eliminate as much of her case as possible beforehand. If only a narrow slice of her allegations survive, and those too are weak or unprovable, the pressure on her to settle or walk away increases dramatically. And if the court ultimately grants him summary judgment across the board, not only would her claims be dismissed, but she could be ordered to pay his attorney's fees, adding financial consequences to the legal defeat. Such an outcome would also be a PR blow, reversing her narrative of being the aggrieved party and framing her instead as someone who overreached legally and lost decisively. The months ahead are critical. As discovery concludes, Justin's team will assemble their summary judgment motion, likely loaded with every inconsistency, jurisdictional flaw, procedural misstep, and piece of exculpatory evidence they can find. Blake's team will try to portray disputed issues of fact to keep the case alive, arguing that a jury should hear her story. But in the end, the decision will hinge less on emotion and more on the cold structure of legal standards. Timeliness, jurisdiction, standing, factual sufficiency, and the protections of litigation privilege and free speech. If the judge sees her case as fundamentally unsupported by admissible evidence and proper legal footing, the trial she's angling for may never happen, and the entire dispute could end not with the explosive courtroom showdown she might have envisioned, but with a dry judicial order granting summary judgment for the defense, possibly accompanied by an award of costs against her. That, in Justin's eyes, would not only vindicate him legally but also serve as a form of karmic closure in a dispute he says should never have escalated this far. Thanks for watching. Subscribe my channel Coravanta. Thank you so much.